All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are jumping headfirst into a book that is, let's be honest, pretty controversial. We're talking about Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. I mean, that quote really hits it on the head, doesn't it? You don't get to choose whether you play the game of power. It's like, whether we want to admit it or not, we are all players on this board. So, it's probably a good idea to understand the rules. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the unspoken game of power. Now, Greene's book, it gets a bad rap, right? People call it this dark, kind of evil handbook. But really, if you strip it all back, it's just a description of how power has worked all throughout history. Here's the problem, though. The laws were written for a totally different era. I'm talking kings, courts, and courtiers. A world where you couldn't just, quit your job and find a new one. Social mobility wasn't really a thing. So that begs the question, how on earth do these ancient, super Machiavellian rules actually apply to our world today?
All right, let's revisit an old law. And what better way to do that than by looking at Greene's number one, his most famous law of all.
Law number 1, never outshine the master. The idea is pretty simple, right? You gotta make your superiors feel comfortably superior. Because if you're too talented, too brilliant, they might see you as a threat. And think about it. Back in the day, in the king's court, the king was the boss until he died, period. Outshining that guy, yeah, that could literally get you killed. Okay, so that was then, but today, welcome to the modern power playbook. Things are, well, a lot different. The approach now is way more aggressive, way more strategic. And here's where it gets really interesting. The old law, never outshine the master. The modern law, make your master feel good until you've learned everything, then focus on getting more power and move past him. See the difference? Greene's original law was all about defense. It was pure survival. This new take? It's all offense. The goal isn't just to stay in the game anymore. It's about strategic advancement. I mean, in a world where CEOs get replaced all the time, the ultimate goal is to become the master yourself. So you might be wondering, okay, how does someone actually do this? Well, there are basically 3 ways to outshine the master. The first one's professionally neutral. This is where you frame all your wins as being for the good of the company. Then there's the slow burn. Here, you outshine them, but you're so incredibly friendly about it that if they retaliate, they just look petty and insecure. And then there's the swift takeover. You play the loyal subordinate right up until they show a moment of weakness, and then you pounce. Yeah, these range from pretty diplomatic to, well, pretty deadly. That swift takeover is absolutely the most ruthless of the bunch. And it's not just theory. Just look at what the Italian politician Matteo Renzi did to his own party's prime minister, Enrico Letta. So here's how Renzi's rise went down. In early 2013, Letta becomes prime minister, and Renzi is this rising star in the party. By late 2013, Renzi's getting more and more powerful, but he's publicly saying, oh no, I don't want the top job. Then, in January 2014, he goes on live TV and basically offers this olive branch to a worried Letta. But just weeks later, the moment Letta looks weak, Renzi makes his move and forces him out. He played the part of the supportive, unthreatening ally perfectly. And here's the kicker. Renzi said to him on TV, Enrico, you can stay serene. Just weeks before taking his job. Letta was reportedly so completely blindsided by the betrayal that he just left Italian politics completely. It's a textbook example of the swift takeover in action. Okay, so this isn't just about law number 1. We see this pattern everywhere. Let's look at another one. Old law number 7 was, let others do the work for you, but always take the credit. Pretty blunt, right? The modern version is way more subtle. Make people feel their work is for a higher cause, while you position yourself to be the real beneficiary. See? The old way is clumsy. Modern power players make people feel good about giving away their credit. A perfect example of this? Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos. She didn't just take the credit. She sold her employees on this world-changing mission. They were toiling away for female empowerment and basic health rights. They felt like they were part of something huge, something revolutionary. Meanwhile, she was the one reaping all the rewards. Okay, so we need to understand the human factor here. This modern playbook, it's effective, no doubt about it. And it's pretty ruthless, but it only tells us the what. It doesn't tell us the why. Why do these power dynamics even exist? Right. Why do our bosses, our mentors, even our colleagues, why do they feel so threatened by our success in the first place? This is where just looking at strategy isn't enough. To really get it, you have to dig deeper into the messy human emotions that are driving the whole conflict. And it all boils down to one thing: insecurity. That's the emotion at the very core of all of this. When a student surpasses their teacher, it can trigger these really deep-seated feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, you name it. It's rarely about logic. It's just raw, human insecurity. Think about it. A mentor feels important when they're teaching you. They feel kind of threatened when you don't need them anymore. So from a psychological point of view, it's a whole different game. A healthy mentor should want their student to surpass them, right? But in reality, very few people can handle that wave of jealousy and insecurity when they get outgrown. So the key becomes managing their emotions first. You have to make them feel valued, even as you're moving past them. Because if you don't, it can have some serious long-term consequences. It's all about playing the long game. Yeah, there's this story from a podcast host who talked about how he argued with and embarrassed this academic gatekeeper. And years later, that same person tried to sabotage his career. It's a perfect example. If you fail to manage someone's ego, it can come back to bite you way down the road, long after you've forgotten about it. Trust me, resentment has a very, very long memory. So how do we forge our own code? We're left with two really powerful ways of looking at this. You've got the cold, calculating strategist, and you've got the empathetic, psychological interpreter. You can think of it like this. The strategist, their goal is to acquire power, and their method is to execute calculated moves to overtake the master. The psychologist, on the other hand, their goal is to maintain relationships, and their method is to manage emotions, to make the master feel secure. So the strategist tells you how to win the battle, but the psychologist, they tell you how to survive the war. And to truly master power, you absolutely have to understand both sides of that coin. Look, the real takeaway here isn't to become some kind of ruthless manipulator. It's about becoming aware of all these unspoken dynamics that are shaping our lives, both at work and at home. That's the first and honestly the most important step. Once you know the rules, you can navigate the game effectively, whether you're playing offense or defense. So, what should you take away from all this? Is real power just about winning the game according to these rules we've talked about? Or is it about understanding them so deeply, so intuitively, that you can start to write your own? That's the real question to think about. Thanks for joining us.